The phone buzzed right in the middle of dinner prep. I was elbow deep in mashed potatoes, flour dusting my sleeves like I'd wrestled a snowstorm and lost. Outside the window dusk was settling soft and slow like it knew we were all holding our breath. The oven hummed low in the background, gravy bubbled gently on the stove, and somewhere down the hall a child laughed at something on a tablet screen. It was that kind of evening, fragile, hopeful, full of the kind of quiet that only comes when everyone's trying hard to be happy. Then the phone rang. I wiped one hand on my apron, not because it helped but because it gave me something to do while I answered. His voice came through flat like a road with no turns, no hills, just straight and cold. "Merry Christmas, Mom won't be joining us." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. Ripples spread fast and silent through my chest. I didn't gasp, I didn't drop the spoon I was holding. But something inside me did. Something small and tender curled up and went quiet. For a second all I could hear was the tick of the old wall clock in the hallway. The kind that chimes every hour even though nobody listens anymore. I stood there staring at the steam rising from the pot, wondering if I should stir it or just let it be. Wondering if I should ask why or just nod like I always do. He didn't say more. Maybe he thought the words were enough. Maybe he was standing in his own kitchen somewhere far away watching snow fall on empty sidewalks. Maybe he was tired too. I said okay. Just that. Okay. And then I hung up. The silence after felt heavier than before. Like the house had leaned in to listen and now didn't know what to do with itself. I looked around at the half-set table, the mismatched plates, the napkins folded into clumsy triangles. All of it suddenly too bright, too loud, too much. Mom had been coming every year since the first Christmas after Dad left. She'd arrive with 2 suitcases, one full of presents, the other full of stories about places she'd seen and people she'd met. She never stayed long, but she always showed up. Even last year when her knee was giving her trouble and she could barely walk without wincing. She'd sat by the fire wrapped in that red shawl, humming carols under her breath while the rest of us fumbled through recipes and burned rolls. Now she wouldn't be here. I turned back to the stove and stirred the gravy slowly. Not because it needed it but because movement kept the thoughts from settling. My mind kept looping back to that voice, flat and final. "Merry Christmas, Mom won't be joining us." Was she sick? Was she angry? Was she just done? I didn't know. And asking felt like poking a bruise. A door creaked behind me. Small feet padded across the floor. "Hey." A small voice tugged at my sleeve. "Are we still doing presents tonight?" I looked down into wide eyes full of glitter and sugar cookies. "Of course we are." I smiled and it almost felt real. They bounced away already, shouting about wrapping paper and who got the biggest box. And just like that the house filled up again with noise, with life, with the kind of messy joy that only kids can bring. I took a breath and went back to work. Peeling the last few carrots, slicing them thin, tossing them into the roasting pan with butter and thyme. The kind of meal that takes time, that asks you to stay present, to pay attention. Good thing too. Because if I stopped moving even for a minute I might start thinking about the empty chair at the table. About the space where her laugh used to live. The radio played softly in the corner, some old holiday tune about sleigh bells and snow. I hummed along even though I didn't know the words. Outside the wind picked up, rattling the bare branches against the window pane. Winter had come early this year and stayed late, like it was waiting for something. I glanced at the clock. Still 2 hours till dinner. 2 hours to finish cooking, to light the candles, to make sure everything looked perfect. 2 hours to pretend I was fine. I filled a glass with water and drank it slow. Cold, sharp, clear. It helped. Then I tied my hair back tighter and rolled up my sleeves. There was pie crust to roll out, cranberry sauce to sweeten, bread to slice. A whole feast to build around a hole that no amount of food could fill. But we would try anyway. Because that's what we do. We gather. We cook. We laugh too loud and talk over each other and burn the rolls again. We set a place for someone who isn't coming. Not because we think they'll show up, but because we want them to know they're still welcome. The oven beeped. I opened it and the smell of rosemary and roasted garlic filled the air. Warm, comforting, familiar. For a moment I closed my eyes and just breathed. Then I got back to work. Because Christmas waits for no one. Not even grief. Not even silence. Not even the ache of an empty chair. And maybe that's okay. Maybe showing up is enough. Even when someone else doesn't. Even when your heart feels like a room with the lights turned off. You keep stirring the gravy. You keep setting the table. You keep saying yes to small hands and big questions and burnt rolls. You keep going. Because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just a spoon in a pot. A breath in the cold. A whispered okay. And that's enough. For now. That's enough. Outside snow fell slow and steady like it had all the time in the world. I stepped onto the back porch barefoot even though the wood was cold enough to sting. My toes curled against the grain but I didn't go back inside. Not yet. The air smelled clean, sharp, like laundry left out too long in winter. It cleared my head a little, or maybe it just made everything else feel farther away. The kitchen behind me buzzed with clatter and chatter, but out here it was just the hush of snow meeting earth. A sound so soft you had to stop moving to hear it. I leaned against the railing and watched my breath curl into the dark. Thoughts came slower out here, not because they were gone but because they had room to stretch. Mom won't be joining us. The words kept replaying, not loud, not angry, just there like a stone in my shoe. I wiped my hands on my apron even though they were clean. Old habit. She used to do that too, always wiping her hands like she was trying to scrub off more than just flour or grease. Like she was trying to wash away the day itself. Last year she sat right where I was standing now, wrapped in that red shawl with the frayed edges. Her knees propped up on a stool, a mug of tea steaming between her palms. She talked about a town she'd passed through on her way west. Said the gas station clerk gave her a candy cane just because it was December 23rd. Said the sky there looked like someone had poured ink over velvet. I asked her why she never stayed longer. She just smiled and said some birds aren't meant to nest. I didn't understand then. Maybe I still don't. But I remember how the porch light caught the silver in her hair. How she hummed that old carol under her breath, the one about stars and stables. How for a few hours the whole world felt smaller, safer, like we were the only people who mattered. Now the porch was empty except for me. And the snow. And the quiet. Inside someone laughed too loud, probably at something silly on a phone. The kind of laugh that means they're trying to fill space. I get it. I pushed off the railing and walked to the edge of the steps. Snow had already covered the footprints from earlier. Smooth, blank, like nothing had ever been there. I wondered if that's how she saw things. If every year she looked back and saw only clean white where memories used to be. Back in the kitchen the gravy still needed stirring. The rolls were probably burning again. Someone would need help tying their bow tie or finding the right gift tag. But I stayed. Just a few more minutes. The wind picked up, tugging at the hem of my sweater. I pulled it tighter around me and thought about calling her. Just to hear her voice, even if it was just to say Merry Christmas and hang up. But I didn't. Because what if she didn't answer? What if she did and sounded tired or distant or worse fine? I turned and looked through the window into the warm yellow glow of the kitchen. Steam fogged the glass a little, blurring the shapes inside. A figure moved past carrying a tray of glasses. Another bent over the oven checking the turkey. Life going on like it always does, whether you're ready or not. I remembered the first Christmas after Dad left. Mom showed up 2 days late with a suitcase full of mismatched mugs and a bag of oranges. Said she got lost, but I knew she'd been crying. She didn't say much that year, just sat by the fire and watched us like she was memorizing our faces. Maybe this is her way of doing the same. From far away, or maybe she just needed to be alone. I don't know. All I know is that chair at the table will stay empty. And I'll keep setting a plate anyway. Because showing up matters even when you can't stay. Even when you leave early. Even when you don't come at all. The snow kept falling thick now, dusting my shoulders like a blanket. I took one last look at the sky. No stars tonight, just gray and white and quiet. Then I went back inside. The warmth hit me first like walking into a hug. Smells of cinnamon and sage and something sweet baking in the oven wrapped around me. Someone called my name from the dining room, asking if I knew where the good candles were. I said top drawer by the sink. They thanked me and hurried off. I walked to the stove and lifted the lid on the gravy. Gave it a slow stir, watching it swirl smooth and rich. Added a pinch of pepper just because. Then I checked the rolls. Yep, burned again. But nobody would care. We never do.